Good evening. I'm still reporting on the truth about the Middle East. Last night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was Hannity's only guest. The occasion was that in 11 days, President Trump meets with the head of the Palestinian Authority to try to find a way to negotiate a peace deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I am continually just blown away that so many people come on this channel and try to argue me away from my support of Israel. I just don't understand how a Christian can do anything other than support the Jews returning to their ancient homeland. It's a tiny country. You can literally drive from top to bottom in a single day, and yet Israel's very existence seems to be the source of eternal conflict. This is such an important interview. Netanyahu knows how to cut to the core of these issues and explain them in the most simple language possible. In the future, whenever someone asks why I support Israel, I'm no longer going to waste my breath or my keystrokes. I'll simply tell them to go look at Still Report number 1590.
So on May 3rd, the president will meet with Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority. And here's an interesting fact. They, A, don't recognize the right for Israel to exist. B, there's 36,000 recipients. They reward as a matter of law those people that kill Israelis. I've read over in the year 2016, close to $300 million.
There is, on an annual basis, they're giving often hundreds of millions of dollars to terrorists or the families of terrorists who murdered Israelis, murdered Americans. It's unimaginable. I mean, after a decade, it could be more than $1 billion that are given to terrorists. This is from, I'm not talking about Hamas. I'm talking about mainline Palestinian Authority, headed by President Abu Mazen, who's going to see President Trump in Washington. And I think the first test of peace is to say to them, hey, you want peace? Prove it. Confront terrorism. Stop rewarding terrorism. Stop paying terrorists. And don't finagle the books. You know, what they do is, okay, we won't pay it directly, we'll pay it to somebody else, and they'll pay it to the terrorists, you know, in a sort of circular fashion. No. Come clean on this. Stop paying terrorists.
They have to
repeal the law.
It's a law.
Yeah, on their books.
It's a law.
They not only pay terrorists, this is the crazy thing, Sean. They pay terrorists on a sliding scale, not on the cost of living, but on the cost of killing. The more you kill, the more you get. And it accumulates to vast sums. Some of it contributed by Americans, by European governments.
The United States of America, the average taxpayer, we're giving them hundreds of millions of dollars.
To people funnel funds to terrorists who have murdered not only innocent Israelis and others, but innocent Americans.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. Has to change. That's a test for peace.
Lindsay,
by the way, if they change, that's significant.
Well,
that's hopeful.
Why would you think that when he talks about every drop of blood that has been spilled for Jerusalem, we bless it?
Because they can get away with it. You know, if I say something, and not only me, President Trump, President Obama, it doesn't make any difference. In our free societies, in our open, transparent societies, if we say a syllable, I don't even say a word, a syllable, to a domestic audience, to our base audience, then it gets beamed around the world immediately. We're held accountable for every word, for every sentence that we make. That's what our free, transparent society is about.
Abbas,
but in the case of Abbas, you know, it's like he lives in a different universe. He can say, I want peace to Western leaders. I want peace. I'm willing to recognize Israel.
So he'll
but
say
then
that
to his own people, he says the very opposite. The true test of their real intention is not what they say to foreign leaders, what they say what they whisper in diplomatic corridors. The real test is what they say to their own people.
Well, that's
and in the case of the Palestinian leadership, including President Abbas, to his own people he says, we don't want a state next to Israel, We want a state instead of Israel. First we get a state, then we flood Israel with the descendants of Palestinians. We go back to Haifa, Jaffa, Tel Aviv, Akko, and so on. That's the end of Israel.
Abbas
but the second
to his own people.
To
talks
his
about,
own people.
He also said we won't allow Jews' filthy feet as it relates to the Alaska Mosque.
Well, talk about religious pluralism. I make one very important rule, and we keep it. We guarantee full, free, unfettered access to the holy sites to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We never say the Muslims have
right in the heart of the old city.
They can go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We guarantee the freedom of religion to all with a spirit of equanimity and a spirit of tolerance and respect to all religions. Very different from what they say to their own people. But the most important thing, how can you pay terrorists? Make peace by demanding from the Palestinians to pass the test of peace.
I've got video evidence, a clip. This is not long ago. This is October 2015. The mother of a killed Palestinian terrorist, a family that is rewarded financially by the Palestinian Authority, celebrates the death of her son's martyrdom, handing out candy, pulling out a knife, threatening her own attack on Israel. And I'll also play for you a clip of October 15th again. 2015 again, a Palestinian Jordanian preschool girl, little preschool girl, holding a knife saying she wants to stab a Jew. Let's play it.
أنا ما بكيتش أعرف وزعلانة ليش ما أخذنيش معاه. لازم محمد أخذني أستشهد معاه وإحنا مش ندمين والحمد لله فخورين وبدي أحليكي بشهادة محمد.
الله يرحمه يا خالتي.
تعيشي.
لا 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 هون لا 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 لا
وأنا السلاح
لا لا هون
سلاح أنا السلاح مخبي لإسرائيل. ديري بالك إسرائيل. ديري بالك.
عشان بدي أطعن اليهودي.
ليش بدك تطعن اليهودي؟
لأنهم سرقوا أرضنا.
سرقوا أرضنا بدك تطعنيهم بإيش؟
بالسكين.
يا قوية أنت إن شاء الله.
Sean, this is what they hear in the Palestinian schools. That's the Pledge of Allegiance that Palestinian teachers, paid by the Palestinian Authority, tell them. This is what they are taught. This is what they're inculcated with. And unless you change that, you don't get to the root of what has been preventing peace. It's this persistent refusal to recognize a Jewish state in any boundary. It's to say Israel will disappear, we'll knife it to death, and we pay the terrorists to do so. That's got to change. Not only for us, but hold the Palestinian leadership accountable. Don't let them get away with double talk. Let them say to their own people what they say to Americans.
Well, I'd like what he said in October 2015. I'd like him to say that to President Trump. Because I guarantee you he will not say that to President Trump.
How about a different twist? How about if what he says to President Trump he has to say to his own people? How about if he says, yes, Mr. President, I'm going to change that law, and we're not going to, in fact, our laws will forbid paying terrorists, and I'm going to come back to Ramallah, to the Palestinian areas, and I'm going to change that legislation, and I'm going to make sure that not a penny goes to the terrorists or their families. And I'm going to make sure it doesn't go by circuitous ways either.
Mr. Prime Minister.
That's a change. Sean, I would be happy. Prove me wrong. But prove me wrong not by nice words that are said in Washington, D.C. in front of the cameras, but the real test.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Change the way you pay terrorists.
You talk about what they tell their own people. For many, many decades now, and I've known you for decades, you have been the sole adult on the world stage with the moral clarity that recognizes the evil in our time. I think the odds of that happening are next to zero. In part, how do you indoctrinate your own children to stab a Jew, like the tape we just played, and expect any other result than a constant, lifelong indoctrination and hatred towards an enemy that you don't even know.
If that indoctrination doesn't change, you're right. If they continue paying terrorists, you're right. If they continue calling in their schools, in their mosques, for the eradication of Israel and for the stabbing of Jews and the Jewish state, you're right. I think that the only chance that this will change is if there's pressure brought to them to make this real change. If there's pressure brought to them to say, no, we're not going to accept just generic words, fluffy words of peace while you indoctrinate your own people with a doctrine of death. There's no one that wants peace more than Israel. This canard that Israel doesn't want peace, that I don't want peace, is exactly that. It's a canard. It's a joke. We teach peace to our children. We yearn for peace. And we don't have double talk because what we say inside is what we say outside. And everybody holds us accountable. It's high time that that accountability was put on the Palestinians. That you tell them, no, I want to see what you tell your children. I want you to stop paying terrorists and their families.
While Beth and I were in Israel 4 years ago, we found no one in Israel who did not want peace, who would not give up anything if they were sure that they could just be left alone to live in peace. This is literally a race of people who has been chased across the face of this planet and just wants to live in their ancient homeland in perpetual peace. They don't want to conquer anyone. They would gladly give up their entire military if they were positive that they would never need it again.
Israel has security challenges unlike any other country. But Israel is unlike any other country because it's New Jersey, but it's New Jersey with F-15s and F-16s.
And bigger.
Well, courtesy of American help, by the way, which we appreciate. F-35s. And a very robust army, a citizen army that is willing and able to defend ourselves by ourselves. And this is the secret of our success. We've been able to, throw away all these attackers, repel all these dangers by the will of our people to defend ourselves. But in so doing, we've found partners in the region because they're being attacked by the same militant Islamists. And they realize that Israel is not their enemy, but their crucial ally in warding off the same threats. So yes, Israel is small, but Israel is powerful.
Maybe
Israel is attacked, but Israel is able to defend and occasionally attack our offenders.
Maybe an unintended consequence, and I remember the speech that you gave before a joint session of Congress. I know at the time President Obama was not exactly happy with it, but I thought it was one of your more powerful speeches that I had seen. But maybe an unintended consequence of this bad Iranian deal, and I concur with your conclusions about this, the nuclear-armed Iran is A squared, B squared, C squared, radical mullahs, weapons of mass destruction, threatening to wipe Israel off the map, is not a consequence the world should ever see.
I'm threatening you
And
all your allies.
Well, we're the great Satan.
Right.
You're the little Satan.
We're the close by. We're the closer Satan.
Right.
We're a mini United States right here in the Middle East.
Well, the only democracy in the region.
The West stops here.
The West stops here. So my question is this: as an unintended consequence, there seems to be maybe an alliance that a couple of decades ago wouldn't have been possible.
That's right.
With the Saudis, Jordanians, the Egyptians, as they fear Iranian hegemony and a nuclear-armed Iran here.
There's no question that the deal with Iran, which paves the way to eventual Iranian acquisition of the critical elements of nuclear bombs, a nuclear arsenal, something we don't accept and never have signed on the deal, and we won't let happen. But because many in the region are threatened by that same Iran and would be immeasurably threatened more by a nuclear-armed Iran, that has brought a lot of the countries in the region to a different thinking about Israel. And so I think this is potent with possibilities, ultimately for peace, but certainly for our common security. And I think there's a recognition of that today in Washington by President Trump, by Secretary Mattis, with whom I just met.
You met with him earlier, yeah.
Yes, and by Secretary Tillerson. I talked to him as well. I think we realize that we face common challenges. And the greatest challenge is the challenge of militant Islam of both kinds. The Shiite variety led by Iran, the Sunni variety led by ISIS. Of the two, both have to be rolled back and defeated. But of the two, the greater long-term danger is from Iran. It's a country of 80 million. It's got oil. It's got other resources. It's developing submarines, developing precision-guided rockets and missiles. It's developing nuclear weapons down the line, satellites. Have that power in the hands of a militant Islamic regime, and the whole world is threatened. And therefore, a lot of in the Arab world understand it. We in Israel understand it. And I could say today that Washington understands it. That's an important change.
I want to do a little history lesson here because I have a tape of then President Bill Clinton. He had given the North Koreans $4 billion with the promise they wouldn't get nuclear weapons. I'm going to play that tape. I'm going to follow that tape with a tape of Susan Rice, John Kerry, and Barack Obama saying the red line in the sand in Syria, that would prevent any further use of chemical weapons, that it eliminated all of Assad's chemical weapons. And then I'll play Obama's promise that his nuclear deal with Iran, $150 billion, would prevent the Iranians from ever getting a nuclear weapon. Now, we're wrong about North Korea, and we're wrong about chemical weapons in Syria. Are we going to be wrong on Iran and what it would mean to the world? Let's play those tapes.
This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected.
We were able to find a solution that actually removed the chemical weapons that were known from Syria in a way that the use of force would never have accomplished.
Russia has been constructive in helping to remove 100% of the declared chemical weapons from Syria.
People may criticize us for not having launched missiles against Assad after chemical weapons had been used, but keep in mind why we didn't. We didn't because they got rid of the chemical weapons.
Today, the United States, together with our allies and partners, has reached a historic understanding with Iran, which, if fully implemented, will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Your reaction?
I think the deal paves the way for Iran to get to a bomb. And I think it also paves the way for Iran's economy to get untold billions of dollars with which they can not only fund their nuclear arsenal, but also fund their aggression, which since the deal was signed has been growing in the region. And I think it's important to recognize that. I think President Trump does. I think it's important to take action, both political action and diplomatic action and economic sanctions actions, and also to take military action as President Trump did against Iran's proxy, Syria, when it used chemical weapons. I think that is an important change.
Bill Clinton was so wrong on North Korea, and they got nuclear weapons. And President Obama was so wrong about the red line resulting in the elimination of chemical weapons. Now, to me, it makes sense if you have a country that's the #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran, that repeatedly says they want to wipe your country, Israel, off the map, and also fire weapons at the United States, burn the American flag, the Israeli flag.
And kill Americans. And they nearly assassinated the Saudi ambassador.
That was in Washington.
Downtown Washington, D.C. That's Iran.
And they're fighting multiple proxy wars against you and others. Here's the question.
And your allies here.
Very true. How does the United States president give $150 billion to the #1 state sponsor of terror? Now, I know you took him on. You still say you had a decent relationship with him, though, with President Obama.
On other matters, yes, but not on this. And also on a realistic and a way to pursue peace between us and the Palestinians. But on the question of Iran, I want to make clear, and I think this is important. Our problem with the deal, my problem was not merely that they would violate the deal, and they will, wherever they can. It's that if they don't violate the deal, they walk into, within 12 years, into unimpeded enrichment of
Uranium.
which is what you need to make bombs. And from there, the distance to making bombs is nothing. Okay, nothing. So I disagreed with that, and I didn't think, and now look at what has happened. Okay, the deal has been signed. Iran's economy is improving, maybe not at the rate that they'd like, but down the line, they're going to get hundreds of billions of dollars by not only because of the cash that will flow into them, but also investments that will flow into them. They'll get more lethal weapons, including in deals that they signed immediately with Russia as soon as the deal was
including
was
for
signed.
missile defense.
Right.
If Israel or the United States or allied countries want to take out those nuclear sites.
And if you add to that their aggression in the region, they moved into Yemen in a big way, which is a maritime route for the world.
And threatening the Saudis.
Not threatening, firing
at the Saudis.
Rockets and missiles into Saudi territory from Yemen. They moved into Syria. They're trying to establish a naval base on the Mediterranean. Can you imagine Iranian submarines in the Mediterranean? You have the Sixth Fleet there, We have our own maritime shipping. You want Iranians there?
Nope.
No, and I said this to President Putin. I said, it's not a good idea.
What did he say?
I'll tell you what I said.
What did he say?
I said it's not in the interest of anyone,
Russia.
including Russia, to have an Iranian naval base in the Mediterranean.
But there's this alliance. You got
and I didn't hear a forceful argument there.
Damascus, Tehran, Moscow. They get along.
Well,
he props them up.
Well, I have to say that we have a good relationship with Russia. I have a good relationship with President Putin. But here's one point where we disagree. That's an understatement.
There is a new sheriff in town. You spent time with President Trump. He, this week, said that the Iranians are violating the spirit of the nuclear deal. And we can see that he and Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, are now moving in a direction to get America out from under the deal, even though I think most of the money was transferred. How important is it that they act on that?
Look, here's my position, but it's my position. Vis-a-vis the deal with Iran, I would, if I had to compress it to two words, repeal or replace.
So those are words Americans know well.
Well, okay, but that would be my position. I think Washington has to decide its own position, but clearly one thing that has to be changed is to not let Iran have the best of all worlds, which is the worst of all worlds for Israel,
and the world.
Arab countries, the United States, the world.
The new UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, was slamming the UN Security Council just yesterday for what she called Israeli bashing sessions, and tried to refocus the Security Council on exactly what you're saying, and that is the threat of Iran and Hezbollah and terror, which the UN steadfastly refuses to focus on.
Right. Well, first of all, it's great that she's doing it, and I know that this comes from not only from her own convictions, which are real, but I think from President Trump. It's a very strong position, and it's a correct position, because what is happening in the UN is a farce. Terrible injustices are happening to women, to gays, to Christians, to Yazidis, to Muslims, by these horrible regimes that permeate the globe and the terrorist organizations that they support. And who does the UN bash? Israel, the one real democracy in the Middle East.
Then Hannity asks Netanyahu about the threats emanating from North Korea.
It's interesting because we see the saber-rattling of Kim Jong-un in North Korea and the threat that he made, again, a super mighty preemptive strike he's talking about against the United States of America. And this perhaps should be factored into when we talk about Iran, and that is that North Korea has nuclear weapons. Now, they would like ICBM capability, marry those nuclear weapons, then they'd have the capability of reaching the continental United States. I guess my question is, if you have a nuclear-armed Iran, how do you stop? How does the United States militarily stop him, Kim Jong-un, from getting ICBM capability when we know he has the capability of launching nuclear weapons at Japan, China, South Korea? How do you stop that at that point? It's too late.
Let me talk about Iran. I think it's immensely dangerous to have a regime, which is not merely a rogue regime, but one here, in this case of Iran, which is, I think Henry Kissinger put it best. He said, it's a cause, it's not a country, Iran. What is the cause?
Caliphate.
The cause is to dominate first the Middle East and then the world with a Shiite revivalism, and to subjugate or remove anybody that stands in their way. First in the Muslim world and then anybody else.
Convert, die.
Or
die.
Yeah. Okay, now you'd say, well, that's madness. It can't be that in the beginning of the 21st century, there are still regimes and movements, causes that believe in this madness. Is it really? Cannot be? Of course it can. It is. It's right before our eyes. And what you see in ISIS is small compared to what you could see with Iran. They too have a cause. They think we're the ones who should be dominant. The world should be an Islamist hill, and we're going to be king of the hill. And that's what they're fighting with the Iranian Shiites. Who's going to be king of this Islamist hill? But they don't disagree that it only has a room for those who adopt and accept through submission their version of Islam. So who's resisting it? First of all, other Muslims, they don't want to go down this path. And of course, non-Muslims like us, we don't want to go down that path either. So we've made common cause to stop these people. But the question right now is, what will happen in this battle if an Islamist state, an Islamist terrorist state, which is what Iran is, the preeminent terrorist state of our time, has the weapons of mass terror, nuclear weapons. You can imagine that this mad scheme, this mad ideology will have the powers to intimidate the world and do irreparable damage. We cannot allow that to happen. In the case of Iran, clearly it hasn't yet happened. And if we are resolute in our policies, very firm in our policies, we can make sure it doesn't happen.
So here are the three most important points in this very important interview. Number one, the Palestinians have to quit paying allowances to the relatives of those who kill Israelis and Americans, and the size of their allowances depends on how many they kill. Number two, Palestinians have to stop drilling hatred of Israelis into the minds of their school children. Nothing will change until this changes, and even if it stops tomorrow, it will take another generation or two for that hatred to work its way through that culture. Unless and until these two basic changes are not just promised, but actually implemented as policy, there can be no lasting peace in the Middle East. Number three, Iran is much more dangerous than it appears to be on the surface. They are cleverly allowing ISIS to make all the bloodshed and the headlines while Iranian ballistic missile development rockets ahead and nuclear centrifuges continue to spin. I've worked with several Iranians in the past. I've appeared on Iranian state television more than a dozen times talking about monetary reform. In fact, about 2 years ago, Iranian state TV offered to bring me to Iran for a week, all expenses paid, to show me what a wonderful country they had. I declined the offer because I valued my security clearance, number one, and as I told my potential hosts, I could not come and tacitly endorse a terror nation whose members of parliament, in an official session only weeks before, had chanted death to America and death to Israel. The only hope for Iran is yet another rebellion by its younger generation, which is very pro-Western and hates the Islamic theologians who rule that nation with an iron paw. This internet-loving generation now commands a sizable majority in Iran. President Obama failed to help them during his first term on 2 separate occasions when they were rebelling in the streets and shedding blood trying to take back their government. Should a similar opportunity arise during President Trump's term, I believe Trump would move swiftly to assist them. I'm still reporting from Washington. Good day.